Genesis, the second chapter, and the 24th verse. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. It goes without saying that marriage is not without its problems. It's a beautiful thing to be able to have someone with you that you can depend on and share your life with, but as I stated before, it's not without its problems. It's hard when you are putting two people together. Two personalities are being merged together into one household. You have different people who are accustomed to living life in their different particular manners, and it's very hard to merge ideas, ideologies, ways of doing things. But as time goes on, you get accustomed to doing things the way that your husband or wife wants them done, or you get accustomed to making a compromise. And another thing that people don't realize is that marriage does not make you whole. Marriage is or can be an enhancement where you have two people that have different strengths. You come together and you put your strengths together as one to form sort of a synergy where you guys both work together as one unit to make life better for yourself and also for the others around you, hopefully. A lot of people get married thinking, oh, I'm lonely, or they don't have a good a good sense of self-esteem. So they'll get married in order to make themselves feel better. But that's the wrong thing to do, because of the fact that if I'm messed up and you're messed up, we just make together one messed up unit. And unfortunately, it happens a lot today. So there's a lot of divorce and there's a lot of shipwreck because people get married for the wrong reasons. It's better for us, I've learned, to have dealt with the issues before we got married or before we get married or plan to get married, because what happens is your issues, if you have low self-esteem, if you have issues of if you have mistrust issues, or you have issues cheating, or whatever your issue is, it's better to deal with the issue before you get married, because marriage does not make it better. Sometimes the problems in the marriage would intensify the problem. And also, the point that I'm trying to get to, and my reason for sharing this, is what I've noticed is that when we as Christians, I want to say, deal with problems in a marriage, it becomes an open door for the enemy to come in and out of the marriage. For instance, if we have issues with trust, if we have issues where we've had relationships where people have disappointed us over and over and again, they've shown us that they were not who we thought they were, the enemy knows that. And he knows whether we've surrendered that part of our life or our personality over to God, and we let God deal with that. And if we did not, he will come in and out of that door of mistrust often. It will be, and we have to realize that the kingdom of darkness is very, very, very well put together, because the enemy tries to mirror the way God functions and the way God has angels and the way God's kingdom functions. So he tries to have a mirror image of God's kingdom. So his kingdom is very, very organized, and he watches us and he sees what we do and how we are. So the enemy understands what our weaknesses are. So he will play on that weakness to make the marriage even worse, because what he wants to do is to bring division. Because if we're divided, then we can't work together as one unit, and we can't bring up strong families if we're fighting against each other. So what he'll do is he'll use that he'll use a spirit of disappointment to play on the disappointments that you've already had, or he'll use that spirit of mistrust to play on that trust issue that may already be in your life from past experiences. For instance, if you don't trust, maybe you're a person who says, oh, I don't trust, if a person doesn't answer the phone when I call, then I always think they're doing something that they should not be doing. So what will happen is that you'll get a strong urge to call your wife or your husband out of nowhere. You can just be sitting watching TV and you'll get a strong urge to call the person. And then you call them and then they don't pick up. And you're furious. You're furious. But what happened right there is that strong urge came from the enemy. Because what I find is what the enemy will do is catch you at a time when he has sent the spirit to make whomever it is, your wife or your husband, be busy at that time so that they cannot pick up. And then he'll send another spirit to you and tell you to call them, whereas you may not even necessarily call them at that time of the day, but you just have a strong urge. The point is, he just wants to make confusion in your marriage. That's the whole point. And sometimes I find that you can have a conversation with your husband or your wife, and you're saying one thing and they're saying another thing. And it's like you guys can never hear what each other are saying. You're saying, can you go to the store and get some milk? Or can you go to the store and buy cereal? And he's screaming, you're not going to control me. You're not going to control my money. And then you're thinking, what am I saying that makes you think that I'm trying to control you? But what's happening is you have a spirit of babble that has come between the two of you, which is making him at that point hear something that you're not saying, because he has an issue with people trying to control him that he has not dealt with. And this is all stuff that I've found to be true. And I've found that in order to control that, because it's a spirit, we can't talk. The more we talk and the more we try to explain ourselves and talk problems through, sometimes it just leads us to a dead end. I'm not saying that communication is not good, because communication is definitely good. But what we have to do most of all is communicate with God, the Father in heaven, because he is the only one that can do something about the problem. Because I found that sometimes you can talk and talk and talk until you're blue in the face, until you're crying, and you never solve the problem. You talk so much until you get frustrated with one another, and then the only thing for you left to do is divorce. The best thing to do at that point is to get on your knees and surrender it to the Father and tell to the Father, because in most cases, the spirit that is fighting you will have to be subject to you and be humble before you once you submit to God. Because the Bible says, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. So the God in you is greater than the spirit that is fighting you. So I just want to admonish you that once you come up against these forces and you have extreme contention in your marriage, just know that most likely it's not something that's normal. It's not the usual norm of disagreements that you may have in your marriage, and everyone is different. Everyone knows, what normal is for them. But what I'm trying to point out is, don't just accept every disagreement or every contentious situation as being normally something that occurs in the marriage. We need to look at it in the light of Ephesians, that says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, against rulers of the darkness, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And know that it's not your husband or your wife that's fighting you, but it's the spirit that's driving them. So next time you see something that seems out of the ordinary, get on your knees, tell the Father, and watch God change things. Be blessed.